KJA Global Channel. The Political System and Me. Series 4. The Political System Across Every Sector of Society. Episode 34. Education Sector. Schools as Democracy Factories. A nation is not built first in Parliament. A nation is built first in classrooms. Long before a citizen casts a vote, that citizen learns something deeper than politics. The meaning of truth. The meaning of dignity. The meaning of authority. The meaning of belonging. The meaning of fear. And the meaning of freedom. Much of that learning happens in school. That is why education is never neutral. A school can become a factory of democracy. Or it can become a factory of obedience. This is where our question begins. What kind of citizen is the education system quietly producing? A school can raise a generation that asks questions. Or a generation that survives through silence. It can teach children to honor diversity as strength. Or train them to see difference as danger. It can teach that authority must explain itself. Or that authority must never be questioned. I used to think the purpose of school was simple. Pass examinations. Receive certificates. Secure employment. But education is larger than employment. Education is a nation's long-term political strategy, whether the nation admits it or not. The system reveal is civic formation through education practice. Schools shape democratic capacity when they cultivate truth, critical thought, dignity, participation, and independent judgment, not obedience or indoctrination. In plain language, the hidden mechanism is civic formation through education practice. Schools are democracy factories or obedience factories depending on design. Curriculum decides what knowledge is official, pedagogy whether students memorize or reason, governance who has voice, teacher ethics how authority is exercised, assessment what is rewarded, and protection whether students learn without fear. The teacher is often the first democratic institution a child ever meets. The child learns not only mathematics, language, history, or science, but what authority feels like. Does it humiliate, threaten, and demand agreement, or explain, listen, correct itself, and apply rules fairly? The teacher, therefore, becomes a living lesson in legitimacy. Authority can mean domination. Or authority can mean stewardship, competence, fairness, and responsibility. Education becomes indoctrination when institutions demand belief without evidence and loyalty without question, closing the student's ability to examine alternatives, recognize uncertainty, and revise judgment. Democratic education is different. It does not require political neutrality about human dignity, truth, equality, or freedom from violence. But it teaches students how claims are tested, how disagreement is governed, and how power becomes answerable. A democratic education integrity test has 6 parts. First, curriculum integrity. Does the curriculum distinguish evidence from propaganda, include difficult history, represent diverse communities fairly, and admit where knowledge remains contested? Second, democratic pedagogy. Are students permitted to ask questions, explain reasons, test claims, discuss alternatives, and learn through inquiry rather than fear? Third, school governance. Are decisions about budgets, discipline, curriculum implementation, safety, and school priorities recorded, reviewable, and open to appropriate participation? Fourth, teacher professionalism and ethics. Are teachers selected and supported by competence, protected from political coercion, and held accountable for abuse, discrimination, corruption, and serious misconduct? Fifth, student voice and protection. Can students raise concerns safely, participate in age-appropriate decisions, report harm, and receive a fair response without retaliation? Sixth, protection from indoctrination. Does the institution prevent parties, governments, armed actors, religious authorities, commercial interests, or ideological networks from turning education into compulsory loyalty. Truth discipline is the first pillar of democratic education. Students must learn that truth is not whatever authority repeats most loudly. Historical claims require sources, scientific claims evidence, public claims verification, and moral claims reasons consistent with equal dignity. Critical thinking is not the habit of rejecting everything. It is the discipline of asking what evidence exists, what assumptions are hidden, what alternatives are possible, and what would change our minds. Media literacy extends this discipline into digital life. Students must learn how images are manipulated, rumors spread, algorithms amplify outrage, sources imitate authority, and emotionally powerful claims bypass careful judgment. Civic education should explain rights, responsibilities, institutions, public money, elections, courts, local government, peaceful disagreement, and lawful participation. It must not become praise of the state, but show how institutions should work, how they fail, and how citizens can seek correction. School discipline is another political lesson. When punishment is arbitrary, humiliating, violent, discriminatory, or impossible to appeal, students learn that power does not need reasons. Fair discipline requires clear rules, proportional consequences, reliable records, an opportunity to be heard, protection from retaliation, and review of serious decisions. Safe learning requires protection from violence, harassment, exploitation, discrimination, and abuse. Inclusion must address language, disability, poverty, geography, gender, ethnicity, religion, displacement, and technology access. A school may be formally open while hidden barriers keep children absent, silent, segregated, or behind. Federal democracy adds another design challenge. Education must respect regional self-government, language communities, local history, and cultural belonging while preserving a common foundation of equal dignity and enforceable rights. The goal is not uniformity. The goal is unity through dignity. A centralized curriculum can erase local identities. A completely fragmented system can produce separate realities, incompatible histories, and conflicting civic values. A democratic federal design can combine common standards protecting rights, quality, scientific integrity, and opportunity with regional authority over language, culture, local history, and context-sensitive learning. Multilingual education can strengthen both learning and belonging. Children often learn best when early education respects the language they understand, while also gaining access to languages needed for wider participation. A fragile democracy often inherits an education system designed by an old regime. Textbooks may glorify power. Teachers may fear independent discussion. Examinations may reward repetition. School administration may answer upward rather than outward. Reform is difficult because education systems are large, underfunded, and habitual, but leaving the old system intact allows authoritarian culture to reproduce. Instead of stopping at the visible outcome, map the education sector through the accountability chain. Authority, duty, record, oversight, answer, correction, consequence. Authority asks who approved the curriculum, policy, appointment, budget, disciplinary rule, or school decision. Duty asks what the ministry, school board, principal, teacher, or safeguarding officer was required to do. Record asks what evidence should exist: lesson plans, attendance, assessments, budgets, complaints, decisions, or inspection reports. Oversight asks who can independently examine performance or misconduct. Answer asks who must explain what happened and why. Correction asks what can repair the harm or improve the system. Consequence asks what follows when responsibility is deliberately or negligently violated. A broken outcome may begin far upstream. The visible harm may be an excluded child, a falsified result, an abusive classroom, a missing teacher, a discriminatory lesson, or a school without materials. But the deeper failure may be an unjust curriculum, an unfunded mandate, a patronage appointment, a hidden record, captured inspection, weak teacher training, or a complaint route that exists only on paper. The chain prevents us from reducing failure to one teacher or one school. It identifies where authority, finance, competence, evidence, oversight, correction, or enforcement stopped working. When citizens and professionals locate that break, criticism becomes more accurate and reform becomes more practical. For this episode, the principal mechanism is civic formation through education practice. The production graphic must make every link readable on a phone screen and label country-specific or proposed arrangements honestly. Under dictatorship, education is shaped primarily by concentrated command. Information is restricted, institutions answer upward, curriculum protects the regime, teachers may be monitored, and challenge may carry personal risk. Dictatorships do not always ban education. They redesign it. They preserve technical learning while weakening independent judgment, historical honesty, civic courage, and the ability to question power. In a fragile democracy, formal rights and school rules may exist while patronage, unequal capacity, corruption, politicized curriculum, weak teacher support, or poor enforcement makes protection inconsistent. Reform may reach urban schools first. Complaint systems may be unsafe. Old textbooks and old habits may remain. In a functioning federal democracy, authority is distributed, common rights remain enforceable, and ministries, school boards, courts, teacher bodies, inspectors, families, students, media, and civil society can test educational power. No democratic design is self-executing. The viewer should compare who decides, how authority was obtained, whether records are public, whether teachers and students participate, and whether transparent governance and complaint mechanisms exist in practice. Protection becomes durable only when education is converted into rules, responsibilities, records, and remedies. The minimum guardrails are: 1. Truthful and inclusive curriculum. Curriculum standards should protect evidence, scientific integrity, difficult history, diverse identities, equal dignity, and freedom from political falsification. 2. Teacher professionalism and academic freedom. Teachers need merit-based recruitment, training, ethical duties, fair pay, freedom to teach honestly, and protection from partisan coercion. 3. Critical thinking and media literacy. Students should learn to verify claims, evaluate sources, detect manipulation, reason across disagreement, and revise conclusions when evidence changes. 4. Safe and non-discriminatory learning. Schools must protect children from violence, humiliation, exploitation, exclusion, and unequal treatment while providing accessible support. 5. Transparent governance and complaint mechanisms. Budgets, policies, appointments, discipline, performance, and serious complaints should create records, independent review, reasoned decisions, and enforceable correction. These safeguards work as a system. Curriculum without trained teachers remains paper. Academic freedom without ethics can protect misconduct. Critical thinking without safety may punish courageous students. Participation without records can become theater. And a complaint without enforcement does not repair harm. Global relevance. Across political labels, ask who defines knowledge, what limits authority, what is public, who participates, who can complain, and whether correction is real. Myanmar relevance. Use lived experience only where it clarifies the mechanism. Do not treat one authority, school system, community, language group, organization, or proposal as the whole country. Separate existing institutions from interim, local, political, and aspirational designs. Here is the civic practice for this episode. See and ask. Ask what story your local curriculum tells about who we are, who belongs, who holds authority, and what it leaves out. Verify. Examine curriculum standards, teacher codes, assessment policy, school governance rules, student safeguards, complaint procedures, and inclusion data. Distinguish official policy from what students and teachers experience in practice. ACT. Apply the Education Integrity Checklist to one lesson, policy, assessment, or school practice. Examine truth, inclusion, critical thinking, authority, participation, safety, records, and remedy. Propose one nonpartisan and evidence-based improvement. Protect children, victims, witnesses, families, confidential records, and digital security before taking any outward step. Review. Record whether you can name the responsible institution, the evidence, the safeguard or remedy, and one safe next step. The measure of success is not visibility. It is whether you can identify responsibility, evidence, a credible safeguard, and the safest practical action. If schools are obedience factories, a nation remains vulnerable to tyranny. If schools are democracy factories, tyranny will struggle to return. Education is not only about children. It is about the future architecture of freedom. The most strategic national investment is not only roads, buildings, or technology. It is the formation of citizens. The most powerful defense of democracy is not a weapon. It is a mind that cannot be enslaved by lies. The principle to carry forward is this. Schools shape democratic capacity when they cultivate truth, critical thought, dignity, participation, and independent judgment, not obedience or indoctrination. Ask yourself, what part of democratic education have I treated as normal even though it should be visible, answerable, and correctable? Democracy is not only a vote. It is a way of learning how to live with truth, dignity, and responsible freedom. Continue the playlist, use the worksheet, and keep the practice safe, truthful, and disciplined. The system shapes our lives. Our participation shapes the system.
Subscribe.
Learn. Participate. Shape the future. KJA. Knowledge justifies authority.